Now, as we analyze this story, there are a couple of things that I think are worth mentioning when it comes to fake news and journalistic integrity. Number one, it is important to understand that it is absolutely okay to admit when you are wrong. And in fact, I'll give you one example of mine. Obviously, like everyone else, I thought this was a very innocent case in terms of it was a transgender woman fighting a real female, but that's not the case. So, what do I do on my social media page? This is exactly what I do right here. I go and I say, Jake, good man. Because just like Jake Paul, I'm sure he's very much misguided from this whole entire news story. And if he knew the context of it in a way that I now just found out, well, I don't know if I would be offering this deal to this girl, but at this point, he's not going to be able to back out from that. And a lot of people are going to really question anybody who's going to go out of the limb and say, you know what, I was wrong. But that is what we're going to analyze, and that is what we need to understand in this story, is that we need to give full context of every story. We need to learn every detail of a story, but not only that, not jump into conclusions without verified evidence. And it leads me to this, my post that I made on my social media page, right, with Jake Paul. It says here, Jake Paul offers Angela, Carini, the Olympic Italian boxer, a lucrative offer. Now, Jake said to Angela, although your dreams didn't come true today because of this crazy agendas, again, analyze that word. There's always the agendas to this whole thing. Here's a question, though. Whose agenda? Because I don't like naturally born male fighting females in a sport more than the next guy. But again, when we talk about agendas, whose agendas are we talking about? And by the way, there's some interesting cases to bring up in terms of possible Russian collusion into this whole ordeal. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, oh my goodness, he's talking about a Russian collusion. It sounds like a right-wing, nut-wing conspiracy or whatever. Look, here's something you got to understand, okay? There is no political ties when it comes to, let's say, coming up with a theory or coming up with understanding a story to its full context. There should be none of that. The problem is there is. So as we go on about the agendas that are in play in our world at the moment, I would love to offer you to fight an MVP undercard to show the world your talents on a fair platform and not against the man. Again, sorry, Jake, you got fooled like everybody else. You know, I thought it was a man also. It wasn't. And it leads me to this post. So right here, I have Eric Trilogy, a Facebook friend of mine, also a longtime jiu-jitsu training partner of mine when he was out here in Sacramento helping Misha Tate and among other talents such as Conor McGregor. So I went and tagged him on this post because obviously he knows Jake, and Jake is the guy that is offering this lady something, right? Because of the fact that she did not want to fight her. I don't know if she's the one that got knocked out or was the one that quit. Either way, obviously, they're still in the R16 quarterfinal stages and moving on to the semifinals and final stages of the Olympics at this point right now on this Friday, August 2nd, 2024. Okay, so here's the interesting conversations that I got out of this whole entire controversy that is going on right now, right? Let's read and take a look at it. Okay. So, my friend Joe right here, Jakipsy, obviously I know him as Joe. All these guys I went to high school with, by the way, just so you understand the context of the stories that they're going to bring up here. Okay, so there are people that's saying she's a woman who likely had higher levels of testosterone. So maybe that's true. If it is, she still shouldn't have been allowed to compete because that's like being on HGH and steroids. Athletes get disqualified for that all the time as biological males and females. This should be no different. Okay, so a very fair argument, because it's not from an argument that stems from whether she's a male or female. Now he's understanding this was a born female, which Ryan is going to rebuttal him right now. She was a born female. It's illegal to be trans in Algerian. He says Algerian, but it's Algeria. But okay, not here to pick on his typo to any degree moving forward. You think they'd let her live, let alone represent the country in the Olympics, if she wasn't an actual female? Of course not. She has a genetic advantage, and by your logic, she does. Because obviously, here's something you got to understand, right? There are females in combat sports that are hypermasculine or have high testosterone levels, which, by the way, is the reason all to point out their success of combat sports. This is all that they are pointing out right here, right? And that's what Ryan is pointing out here. By your logic, if you're tall, you shouldn't be allowed to play basketball because it's an unfair advantage. Michael Phelps also has a genetic advantage over the rest of the competitors should his medals be removed because he was born the way he was. And so I asked Ryan a very important question. This was the turn of this whole entire ordeal for me, okay? Because you have to be very honest with yourself. Look at me in the eye when I say this right now. You got to be honest with yourself. If you're wrong about something, admit when you're wrong. Say, you know what? I'm wrong. I want to be on the side of the truth. And as a result of that, I'm going to change my position, and you should not be scrutinized or held to a box of a certain political dynamic in order for us to accept you or whatever type of view or acceptance you're looking for out of this. But moving forward. So I asked Ryan, is there proof and evidence that suggests she was born a female? Considering I have mostly MMA, MAGA, West Coast bangers, bros in my echo chambers. So this is important to bring up, and I'm going to tell you why. If you only listen to a certain type of people, it is obvious that you are going to fall into the trap of an echo chamber. Now, look, here's the thing. As a Muslim, at least on the Sunni Orthodox Salafi side, you really have to be in a certain position where you don't want to listen to those that are misguidance, that are full of misguidance, or in the way that we see it in Islamic context, somebody that is spreading falsehood in terms of leaning more towards the religious practices. Okay, but this is true. However, if you stick into a certain echo chamber, how you're going to view a certain news and how you're going to view a certain worldview based on these news events are going to be altered. And as a result, you are stuck in these echo chambers. You're going to ride the stereotypical bullet points of what Republicans or Democrats want to do. For example, obviously, if you're a Republican, you're going to be anti-abortion. And if you're Democrat, typically you're going to be pro-abortion. But there are people out there, not necessarily myself, but people out there that have different variations of that. There are Republicans that are okay with abortion. And you got to ask them, why is that? That's none of my business, but that's the reality of the world. So there are all these different dynamics that we have to try and understand in the complex world that we are currently living in. So what Ryan says right here is he cites this. Aside from her competing in the 2020 Olympics as a woman and every tournament she has been as a woman, here you go. New York Times right here. Olympic official defends Algerians' eligibility in boxing controversy. Okay, so let's get to this article right here in the New York Times. Olympic officials defend controversy online, lefting Paris complex questions about fairness in women's sports. Chief spokesman in the ring Friday, fully aware that she was walking straight into a swirling controversy. Okay, and then there you go. That's where they start trying to get you to pay for New York Times. All right. So, no. Okay. So, Here's something you got to understand about that, right? We're going to go back to present the screen right here. We're going to go back to this argument that we had going on online. So basically, to put it in layman's, what that whole entire article was saying in the New York Times is that it is confirming she is a woman. There is no doubt about that. Now, the only controversy here, as what my two friends are mentioning here, obviously, is just about the HGH level. So Joe is obviously saying that, well, her HGH levels are too high, and as a result of that, uh, you know what? Maybe she shouldn't compete because there's limits to these things, right? And so I said to Ryan, I said, "Yeah, what's going on, bro? I'm really living in an echo chamber, and I'm willing to admit this instead of doubling down on my own mistakes. Remember, this is what a lot of people do. They like to double down on their mistakes because they have to fit a certain program. So remember, I'm a combat sports journalist, so integrity is an important part of media, right? Meanwhile, Fox News and every bro science YouTuber, she's the Algerian Kate Jenner, right? Which is what a lot of people are saying right now. So Joe says here's where it gets really interesting right here. He says, I don't know why you're coming at me when I merely seeded she was she has higher testosterone levels. Why don't you just have that same energy and conversation in person when you live two down doors from me? And then I said, well, at least I know that if you two fought, there would be no mistake of who you both are. Obviously, just trying to throw a little joke into it. Um, so I asked Joe, do you not think this changes things with what Ryan is presenting us here? A question: is she born a woman? The answer is yes. So the other controversy: did she have high testosterone levels? The answer is yes. And does she have the same type of testosterone levels that maybe Amanda Nunes, Prime Rousey, and Chris Cyborg? Yes. The unknown. Let's talk about the unknown here, right? Is she transitioning into a man and therefore perhaps testosterone levels became a manipulative factor into this argument? Well, so far there has been no evidence to show that she was trying to alter herself into a man. She's been a woman her whole entire life, just a very hyper masculine woman in a very hyper masculine sport. So, universally college education actually helped me become more objective in investigative matters. So, I don't know what happened to these liberals and MAGA bro boys because, hey, that's the reality of how a lot of people are looking at this. So Ryan says to Joe, not an attack, just replying, sorry if it came across that way, bud. Haha. He says, I do not know. I didn't know that. Okay. So Ryan also says she's from Algeria where being trans is punishable by prison time. I highly doubt she's transitioning and probably didn't know that this was a thing until recently. She lost last few times she was in the Olympics also, and no one said anything. But this time, okay, this is where it gets interesting. Okay, this is literally the main event of the whole entire content right here, right? This is what got my attention from Ryan, okay? She lost a few times in the Olympics. No one cared, but this time it caught attention of the Russian FSB, who isn't a fan of the IOC to begin with after the doping scandal a few years back. Russian propaganda working as intended to muddy the waters and make people outraged over a nothing story. I feel bad for her. I do too as well, Ryan. Now imagine spending your whole life training to compete in the Olympics and you make it to represent your country. You win, then the internet goes, she must be a man. I tell you what, I gave the angry emoji because that's how I feel. I'm like, you know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. If she was born a woman, we got to give her that benefit of the doubt. And unfortunately, we did not. Okay, so moving forward. Uh Joe says, seriously, yeah, man. Okay, that's all right. So that one is Let's leave that one because there's some little bit of some private information there. Okay, also, this pisses me off. Why aren't we discussing this? I'm sure everyone here can agree this child effing is disgusting. Okay, so child rapist Stephen Van. Oh, yes, I've heard about this news. Volleyball player got booed every time he tried to serve. Good. Now, here's the thing, right? That's a different discussion to be had. But again, very interesting to bring up to this argument at hand. How do they vet people into the Olympics? Right? What is allowed? What isn't allowed? I'm assuming it is allowed if you are an ex-con of some sort, right? Is there a rule that says, you know what, maybe this is allowed? Maybe this is okay, and reasons why. Now, if you hurt children, well, you got to understand, right? The world doesn't operate like America. Now, here, you can't operate or even go anywhere, let alone probably get a second chance in life with a job, let alone live a normal life of safety if you were that type of person. But other countries, I got to be honest with you, they don't look at it that way as what the rest of the world does. And it's sad to say, but that's the truth. So moving on with that. Yeah, I did not know that. Right on, man. I agree. This is gross as hell. Yeah, I'll talk about it on my next YouTube upload. I'm reading everyone's comments in here, so please be on your least desirable behavior. Obviously, joking on that. So, Matt Rodriguez, also another high school buddy of mine. I don't know. Looks like she just quit to me. Hate to say that that's what it is. The hormone levels were checked prior to the competition and deemed to be within a normal range. I'm going to love this right now. So, shout out to Matt Rodriguez on that. It's all the years people said Cyborg was juicing. Then she went up against someone who wasn't scared to fight in Nunes and got her butt whooped. To give up without falling on your shield gets no sympathy from me. Women get beat the S out of men all the time in combat sports. Dude, did you look at her? Even if she's a female, she looked like she altered her testosterone levels. The IBF banned her for the same factor. There's many women, Matt says, that look similar in boxing today. The IBF incident was because at the time, her tests... hold on. Because at the time here, test levels were too high. It wasn't upright ban for competing in the IBF just in a particular tournament. Her levels were suitable levels to compete in these events, and after testing, she shouldn't be denied of the opportunity to compete. It's a double standard that happens all the time to athletes. Simon Biles having rules made to stifle her skills. Richardson not being able to compete because of weed, and even other athletes have admitted to using weed, and many more. And in my opinion, you go out there to compete and win against the best within the rules. You don't complain about the rules after you get there and have signed up, especially when it comes to combat sports. So Joe says, are you considered suitable? So what are considered suitable levels? That's the point. An athlete was disqualified from receiving her medal because she had methamphetamine in her system that was in the cough medicine she took the night before. Also, Formula F1 limited in output in certain vehicles. Otherwise, Ferrari would win all the time. They went with it. No complaints. This is a reference to unfair advantages, albeit natural or not. She had an unfair advantage. By the way, shout outs to Joe for bringing that up in terms of the information with F1 Formula Racing. Obviously, it's a very niche sport. So, yeah, that's a very useful information right there, Joe. Shout outs to him on that one. Give him a care on that one. All right, so I have to disagree. Caliph has taken losses before. It's not as if she's unbeatable because of her test levels. This is very true. Sometimes styles make fights. It's not as if she was the only one being tested prior to fighting. In combat sports, you go in knowing full well what the risk you're taking. To just give up and claim an unfair advantage seems like she took the easy way out. Warriors find a way. That's what I'm talking about, Matt Rodriguez. So let me make a comment on that right here, on that particular subject, what Matt was talking about. You're absolutely right, Matt. I think she knew and understood that the tests were as legit as they come. And maybe there was the propaganda that sort of muddied the waters and making everybody think so much in a paranoid matter, right? Like, oh, now we can't trust it or this and that. So big ups to Matt on that one. That was a very good point. It's a very good point on that one. So moving back to that one. Um, he says to Joe, I might agree if it was a different sport, but as far as boxing or any combat sports goes, I can't. You either have the killer in you or you don't. Like I've said, many women fought actual men all the time. They've taken their L's with grace. I'd respect it more if she went out there and actually fought and took the L. I'll even respect it if she quit, shook her hand, and said, I ain't got it in me to beat her. But to just not even try on the biggest stage of the world where people would give up anything to be on, nah. And Joe says, I understand, but you know how often I was accused of steroids and HGH when I would F dudes up 2 weight classes higher on my weight. But in that case, it was a legitimate case. If she was slightly below the acceptable level, she still has a lot higher than her. And that's true. He has a good point in that. There are people out there, right, that get accused of steroids all the time. And again, we don't know. We never really know. But then there are people that really don't take them, and other people are just looking for excuses as to why they weren't able to beat the dude. But Matt also says, the way that I see this, she knew the results of the testing, knew the conditions of the fight before entering into it. And as soon as she stepped into that ring, she accepted the contract. So to just quit and cry foul doesn't cut it for me. Everyone competing has to agree to those terms. Either you're here to compete or not. And if you're not, don't blame anyone else but yourself. Would you ever have made that excuse that you lost because they were 2 weight classes up? And if you lost to someone 2 weight classes up, did you still shake their hand before you knew they were the better wrestler that day? You didn't have to go into matches against bigger guys, right? So as soon as you hit that mat, you knew you were up against. You knew what you were up against. This is giving Garcia versus Haney energy, and she's looking hella Devin right now. Wow. Okay. So there's some good points there. Matt says, another thing that's bothering me about this, if you go back and watch 46 seconds, she barely gets hit. I've hit girls at boxing gyms sparring harder than that. Hell, I've been hit by girls in my boxing gym harder than I've talked to female pro boxers. And the first thing she said for me was for a medal that would have had to kill. Oh, wow. Okay. And so what does Matt here have? Okay, boxer who abandoned 46 apologizes to rival. Okay, so there it is. She apologizes to the rival, and shout outs to Matt on that one. So she admits that she was wrong, and then there you have it. And Jake Paul, I don't know what's going to come out of this. That's obviously going to be a video for another time. And yeah, right here. The best comment of them all right here. There it is. Yeah, but that's really what it is in the first place, right? It's just a woman that looks different than other women, and that's really all there is to say about that. So what did we learn from this particular story right here that I think is worth mentioning as I close out the last few minutes of this video? What we learned was that we can't run with our emotions. We have to learn to be stoic. We can't run off to conclusions without verifying the evidence. We also have to learn to admit when we are wrong and to say, sorry, I want to be on the side of the truth. And as a result of that, I relinquish my former take on this matter at hand. I was wrong. I didn't have the evidence. I didn't have the full story. And I didn't have the proper backing or the proper citing of this particular evidence or the lack of. You never want to put a jacket on anyone that is not who they are, because not only is it dangerous, it can ruin their careers, but ultimately it could also ruin their lives in ways that we couldn't even imagine. Well, that is all that I have for this content. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next content to come, inshallah.